You're listening to the Rise Above podcast, the only podcast on the planet with a mission to help you live a free and uncommon life. Here's your host, Greg Smith.
Yes. Welcome. Thanks again for joining me today. This is the Rise Above podcast, and you're listening to episode number 14. This is going to be a couple-part series. Not sure how long it's going to be, but it's going to be geared towards fitness professionals. So I'm your host, Greg Smith, and I believe if you desire uncommon freedom in business and in life, it starts with creating a champion's mindset from within. So today's episode, and really this series, I want to share kind of my story and my background. A lot of people don't know, and I'm sure you probably don't know specifically, but many years ago when I was trying to find my way in life, I didn't go to college, and I did a bunch of odd and end jobs, and I ended up in the corporate world. And it was during that time that I was coaching high school wrestling. And I thought that I would turn into this like head coach and run a program. And little did I know that was basically charity work. I made $400 for the entire year, which was about 4 months of work. And it was hours upon hours every single week. And so needless to say, it was not going to be enough money to take care of my family. And so I had this passion for coaching and teaching, and I always have. And that's really what birthed this podcast, as well as just teaching and coaching. And so I had a mentor early on ask me if I had ever thought about becoming a personal trainer. And I said no. At the time I said, well, I'm not qualified to do that. I don't have a degree. I'm didn't go to college. Like, I don't understand. And he pointed me in the right direction. And so what I did is I actually bought a plane ticket and I flew out to Colorado, and I shadowed him for a week at his facility. He was running a semi-private training program inside of a facility that had over 3,000 members. And he had this great program. He had multiple trainers. And I shadowed and took all of his systems and noted them, learned them, and I brought them back to Ohio. And I come from a very small town. However, in my town, it's uncanny how many fitness facilities and studios there were at the time. And so I came back and I started calling every single place in town. And I was essentially asking them for an interview. And some people would meet with me, and I would outlay to them what my plan was. And essentially what I was asking them is to work for free and let me shadow what they're doing. And at the same time, build a program that was based off of my mentor's program and essentially duplicate that within their facility. And I didn't want to get paid unless I created fruit or I create an actual revenue source for that facility. And so it was going to be 100% commission work. And I literally had every place that would meet with me turned me down. They either said, you're not certified. And now granted, some of this, it was looking back, I fully understand where they were coming from. However, I'll tell you how it went and ultimately how God just had a plan for this. But all of them said no, for many different reasons. However, to me at that time, being young, I was 22, I'm thinking, I'm going to work for free. I'm going to build this program. Like, it's all benefit to them. And I only reap reward if they reap reward. So it's a win-win. And they all turned me down. Then I had other places that wouldn't even meet with me. And I felt so defeated because I remember seeing a vision for what I wanted to do. Now that I understood, I never even thought of it as a profession. Right? I just knew I loved coaching because that's what I did in wrestling, but I never thought that I could actually create an income coaching people in the health and wellness industry. And here we are 11 years later, and I've done just that. But what transpired from that was this brick wall where literally every single facility, studio, gym owner, everybody in town turned me down. And I kid you not, I felt like there wasn't an answer. I didn't know what I was going to do at that point because I don't know if you've ever had a dream that you see so vividly yet you come against this force that is holding you back, and you feel like there's no way to achieve the dream, but you feel like you're called to achieve the dream. It's a weird dichotomy, but what happened was I was on the phone with my mentor, and I was, down and out, and essentially, just telling him how this wasn't going to happen. And I remember he gave me some tough love and essentially said, well, I don't know what you're going to do, but you need to do something. And I remember that day I made one more call. And that call was to a gym owner who lived, who his gym was 20 minutes south. So they're in a smaller town. It was 20 minutes outside of my town. So I didn't really want to commute. And that sounds, 20-minute drive where I live now is pretty normal. But where I grew up, small town, you could reach everything 5-10 minutes. And so I call this gym owner. I tell him what I'm looking to do. And he says 100%. And he's like, yeah, come on down. I'd love to meet with you. And I was like, oh my gosh, this, awesome. And so it's so funny. I went to a private Catholic school. So I wore khakis and polo shirts my whole life. And I literally had a pair of khakis left over. That was the only pair that I had. And so I wore those. And then I had to go to Kohl's and buy a button-up shirt because I didn't have really a nice enough shirt to go like interview or impress this guy. And so I went and bought that stuff, and I go down to the meeting and I meet with him, and he was awesome. His name was Sean, and Sean has a great business. And Sean was so awesome that he was like, yeah, you can come. Why don't you basically intern with me and shadow with me? Like, I would love to help you. And it was that mindset, that abundance mindset of somebody that was willing to help somebody else like me get into the industry, that I feel so compelled to pass on. And that's what this series is really about, is I want to share some insights that I've learned. And I really want to be able to help people that are in the fitness industry, because what I've seen is that many people either get out of the industry by the time that they're 30 or 35 because they're not making enough money, or they're 35, 40, 50 years old and they're, struggling to make ends meet in the fitness industry, but they have a heart to help people, or they're brand new like myself and they just don't know where to begin. And so through this series, I want to really help people and guide them just on basically sharing my experience and some tips, because just recently I was asked, what would I do if I had to do it all over again? And that exercise has really helped me dial in just how I would mentor and coach somebody, which I've done many times to start their own business. So back to Sean and interning. What was cool is, so at the time I was working third shift, and I was starting another business kind of on the side. And then I started interning with Sean. So I could go down there during the day and then I could work at nighttime. And so I literally would go meet Sean at his gym. And at the time he had just opened his gym within a year or two. And so where he had originally gotten started was he was doing one-on-one training in home with very influential people in the area.
Are you someone who wants to live life on your own terms? Do you dream of having more time to spend doing the things you love? Then download your copy of The Freedom Formula absolutely free at www.riseabovepodcast.com. What are you waiting for? Go to www.riseabovepodcast.com to get your free copy of The Freedom Formula.
And so I would come down, I'd meet him, and we'd hop in his car and we would drive while jamming to Tony Robbins. And we would drive, which I'll just say it was a it was a convertible white Geo Metro. So, here's two dudes. I barely know this guy. We're listening to Tony Robbins, but we connect on this level, and we're jamming to Tony Robbins in a Geo Metro convertible down the highway, another 20, 30 minutes south to go train people in their home. And so I would literally shadow him and watch him for months. And I'd see what he's doing. He would teach me as he's doing it. And through that process, I got certified, officially certified as a trainer. And then I ended up getting one of my first clients. And so that was a gal from my town. And so she would drive down and meet me. And then I had a couple more clients. And so This was the fall of 2007. And I realized at that point that I was almost heading down one of the same paths that I was going to be heading down if I was a coach. And that was the path of struggle, because I realized that there was only so much time in a day, and there's only so many people you could train within that time. And that's what led me to really find out that there's only 3 ways that you can make money as a trainer or a business owner in general, and it does apply to all business owners, but as a trainer in general. And these 3 ways are what guided me to the decision that I made in the early winter, essentially, of 2008, when I told Sean that I was going to be opening up my own boot camp back in my hometown. That way I didn't have to commute. And ultimately I had 100% control over what my rates were and ultimately what my hours were. And, that was just it, because I had seen trainers, and I've always observed, through this process, I saw people who were earning good income as a trainer, but they were working their tails off from just like dusk till dawn. They were working, they were doing one-on-one sessions. They were always working, or if they weren't working, they were sitting around at the gym, which is where I found myself, waiting for the next session to come. So essentially you're stuck in this jail where you have a session at 6 a.m. and then another one at 7. That one ends at 8, and then you don't have another one until 9:30. So you got an hour and a half that you're, unless you live close to the gym, you're basically stuck there. So you either have to work and do, marketing or find something else to do. And this was before social media age. Now I'm sure, most trainers that are in this world are probably just scrolling Facebook and thinking they're working their business during that time. But I found myself stuck there. And if you're honest with yourself, which is what I was back then, you have to take that into effect of what your hourly rate is. So if you're making money from, let's say, 6 to 8, and then you have 8 until 9:30 open, and then you have 9:30 to 10:30 booked, well, you have to take in however much you made during those 3 sessions and divide it and add that hour and a half in there, that buffer space, because you're still required. You're not required to be at the gym, but there's no point in leaving and then coming back, because it's almost inefficient depending on your setup. So long story short, the 3 ways that I learned, which I'm going to share with you right now, and then we'll lead into the next episode, is this, and I'll dive into these a little bit more. Number 1 is you could have, ways to make more money as a trainer, right? You could have more clients. So if you're doing one-on-one, that requires more hours. So it seems pretty simple, and that's where most people focus, is they say, well, I need more clients. And so you can have more clients and you can make more money that way. The second way is you can charge more money per your time, right? So you can be, let's say, the premium trainer around, to where you're not charging what every other trainer charges. You're charging a little bit more. So you can charge more money for your time. You could have more hours that you spend with different clients if you're doing one-on-one, or if you're a coach that's getting paid for some group stuff and you're not the owner, you can hopefully get a couple more classes under your belt. Or number 3 is you can get people, your customer, to exchange money with you more often for additional services. Okay. And so the pros and cons to all of these is, number 1 is if your only way to make more money, let's say that your rate is set and you're not willing to raise your rate. Or you've already done a good job and you've set a good rate. If you're one-on-one, then you're required more time if you get more clients, right? If you're the gym owner and you get more clients, and depending on how many more you get and how you're scaling your business, you may be required to get more equipment or a larger space. When it's done correctly, that's a good problem. I have a close friend that I've mentored from starting his fitness business from the ground floor up. We started with 800 square feet. We scaled that to 3,000, then to 5,000, and now he's at 10,000 square feet. But we scaled it appropriately to where it made sense. We literally would get to one facility, bust it out of its seams, and then move to the next one. Okay? So that's not a bad issue if you're doing it correctly and you can afford to. So more clients, though, typically requires more time. So there's a balance in between all of these that you can really set, right? Having a higher rate, more clients, and then getting them with additional services. We call this the value ladder, additional services over what your base service might be. So, this is what led me to starting off in the beginning as a boot camp model. And the boot camp model was because I could have more clients and they could afford, because my rate per hour for them was less than what they would pay me one-on-one, but it was still more than what everybody else was charging if you were to break it down. And by the way, if you're always trying to compete on price, you will never win that battle. That's the Walmart model, and Walmart always wins. And in this industry specifically, there's always a young fitness professional that's just out of school. They don't have typically a family. Like I didn't back then, but I still set my rates higher. But they typically don't have a family. They don't need it to be a career yet. They're just trying to break into the scene. And so there's usually always somebody else who would do it for less money than you will. Okay. And so if you're always trying to compete with them based upon price alone, then you will typically lose. And so where you have to compete is with your service, how well you provide results, and ultimately your marketing. Your marketing, your culture, and the results that you get your clients is what will set you apart. And so I want to encourage you, if you're already in the industry, you may need to raise your prices. I mean, if you haven't raised your prices in 5 years, well, you're making less money now than you were making then because of the price of inflation. Everything else has gone up in price. So you should too. Now there's a specific way you want to do that and to do it the right way without ruining relationships. But you need to raise your prices if you haven't within the past few years. So anyways, the whole point is you should not try to compete on price. You should try to compete on the value and the service that you bring. So I'm going to end it right there for today's episode. And then what we're going to do in the next episode is we're going to dial more into how to get more clients specifically for your fitness business. And this strategy that I'm going to go over is really going to tell you where to spend your time and how to be efficient with your marketing. Because right now I see far too many people trying to market online, and that's fine. There's a place and time for that. However, they're spinning their wheels and they're wasting time when there are tried and true methods that you can do offline that can cost you next to nothing, if nothing at all. And you can start getting more members, customers, clients today if you do it right. And so that's what I'm going to dive into on the next episode. And until then, take care. God bless.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.